Greetings, my dear viewer. 40 years of married life is a lot. It seemed that after so many years of life spent together, the couple should live happily and enjoy their grandchildren. But alas, sometimes fate has completely different plans. The hero of this story has lived with his wife for 40 years, and now his wife tells him the unpleasant news. His world has collapsed. How will he get out of this situation? Let's find out. And while you're listening to this story, my dear friend, put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Tuesday started on a decent note, but by the end of the day, everything had changed for the worse. When I woke up in the morning, everything looked normal, except for the absence of my wife, Debbie, next to me. I usually get up earlier because I have to start work at 8 in the morning, and Debbie sleeps until 10 in the morning. After completing my usual morning chores, I went downstairs to make coffee for both of us, but found Debbie already dressed for work and sitting at the breakfast table where coffee was already brewing. She greeted me with a smile and we exchanged good morning wishes. While I was pouring myself a cup of coffee, my wife mentioned that she had an early work meeting and would be home by 5 to chat. This took me by surprise, and I asked if I had forgotten anything. Debbie waved it off, saying that we could discuss it later and that it could wait. With that, she put her cup in the sink, gave me a quick kiss goodbye, and left before I could say anything. Before I begin to tell you about this story, it is necessary to tell you about us. My name is Tim Johnson, and my wife Debbie and I have been happily married for over 4 decades. We bonded right out of high school at the age of 18, having known each other since 2nd grade. Our relationship blossomed in our teens, and it was clear to both of us that we were destined to spend the rest of our lives together. We were both each other's first and only, as we had never dated anyone else. I had never even kissed another woman other than a friendly kiss on the cheek, and I think the same was true for my wife. We went to the same college, lived in a budget apartment, and worked part-time to make enough to live on. I was fortunate to be supported by the GI Bill, a program designed to help veterans of the U.S. Armed Forces. Thanks to her parents' help with tuition costs, the financial burden was well within Debbie's reach. Starting a family during college was a challenge, but not too difficult thanks to her parents' support. Now, our oldest daughter, Terry, is 37 years old, successfully married, has 2 children, and works as a family law attorney at an out-of-state firm. Darcy, our second daughter, recently turned 35, is single, and works as an assistant principal in Washington, D.C. The youngest, Sydney, is 34 years old and happily married to a police officer in our township. She is caring for our 2 grandchildren and is a dedicated stay-at-home mother who works tirelessly. We cherish our 3 daughters very much. After graduating, I pursued a career as a risk analyst at a well-known insurance company, and Debbie decided to become a gymnasium teacher in a neighboring school district, and then moved part-time to administration. Now the 2 of us, my wife and I, are 59 years old, and we maintain excellent physical health. We still lead an active lifestyle. I enjoy playing golf, swimming, and going to the gym at least 3 times a week. But my wife confuses me with her commitment to physical exercise. She goes to the gym 5 days a week and runs long distances almost every day. In my opinion, she is the most beautiful woman I have ever looked at. Despite the fact that she has 3 children and has been married for 41 years, she still weighs the same as on our wedding day. It's not that bad. In her youth, she was stunningly beautiful, attracting the attention of everyone present. She is still turning heads, arousing the admiration of men half her age. Despite this, she behaves gracefully and confidently, always radiating dignity. Debbie and I often wonder how lucky we are to have each other and to live in our own version of the American dream. We give thanks every day for the life we have created together. Unlike many men, the phrase, "darling, we need to talk," does not terrify me. I'm not overwhelmed with fear, and I don't start sweating profusely. I'm actually intrigued because we talk to each other a lot. We call them family conversations that we had before we had children. This is how we plan our lives. But she didn't mention that we would have such a conversation this time. At work, I didn't worry about the upcoming meeting, but continued to talk about the incredible lovemaking the night before. Debbie is an assertive and lively partner in our relationship. She always knows exactly what she wants and knows how to get her way. Despite the fact that we have been married for a long time, she continues to assure me that she will never change, because it will be too difficult to find a new lover. We are still active, making love 3 times a week. Intrigued by her courage, I left work early to get home before Debbie. I wanted to relax with a glass of my favorite single malt before she arrived. When I pulled up to the garage, my curiosity quickly turned to alarm when I noticed my wife's car parked there. My anxiety increased when I entered the house and saw that she was sitting at the table with glasses of wine and whiskey already poured and standing in my usual place. She looked puzzled, her free hand nervously rubbing her knee, a habit I had noticed since our first meeting. I asked if I should change my clothes before starting, but she insisted on starting immediately. She told me to sit down, and I obeyed without a murmur. When I sat down, I was seized with a feeling of anxiety. I was sure that she was going to tell me some sad news. My chest tightened, making it difficult to breathe normally. Looking into her eyes, I saw an unfamiliar expression that haunted me. She looked worried, her voice trembling as she spoke in a low, deliberate tone. "Tim, I've been thinking about a question for some time now, and I really need to share it without interference. I'm asking you to let me finish before answering, so that you understand the meaning of what I'm about to say." She radiated more confidence with every passing moment. "I need you to stay calm and not let this escalate into a childish outburst. Can you promise me that?" I nodded silently, preparing for what was going to happen. She calmed me down. "I love you more than anything in the world, darling. You've been the only one in my heart since I was in high school. There has never been anyone else." I felt that the situation was about to change for the worse. The pain in her chest increased. It became difficult to breathe, and the constant pain in her shoulder increased as she spoke. She imagined a future in which we would grow old together, surrounded by great-grandchildren, traveling the world hand in hand. But as she continued to speak, the pain in my shoulder shifted to my left arm and I felt dizzy, barely catching my breath. "Tim, listen carefully. This is very important," Debbie continued. I just nodded, unable to believe that this was happening to me. "I've been thinking about this for months now, and I need to do something before it's too late. I need to try dating other men to figure out what I've been missing all this time. It won't be forever, maybe just 6 months, and then I'll become your devoted wife again and show you the full depth of my love for you every day." I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't leave my lips. Suddenly, darkness enveloped me. Light struggled to break through the haze around me. My eyelids became heavy as I tried to open them. Eventually, I succeeded. Trying to make sense of my surroundings, I became confused. The beeping in the background further disoriented me. I couldn't move, my throat was sore. Questions flooded my mind. Where am I? What happened to me? It dawned on me that I must be in a hospital. As I lay in my hospital bed, it hit me. I'm Tim Johnson, and my wife tried to end my life. But why? I tried to piece together the events leading up to that moment. I vaguely remembered sitting at the kitchen table, my wife talking to me. And then it hit me. It wasn't a conversation, it was a threat. As my mind began to clear, a nurse appeared at my bedside, watching me with a gentle smile. "Welcome back, Mr. Johnson. I'm Nurse Smith. You are currently in Mercy Hospital due to a severe heart attack known as the Widowmaker. It's a miracle you're still with us. It's 3 o'clock in the morning and the doctor will be here this morning to discuss your condition in more detail," the nurse mumbled. I tried to speak, but my throat was sore and dry, and I couldn't get a word out. "Don't try to speak, Mr. Johnson. Your throat needs time to recover from the ventilator." Nurse Smith handed me a notepad and pen. She informed me that I had visitors, including my wife and daughters. I shook my head and quickly wrote back in large letters, "No visitors." She was surprised, but inquired, "Are you sure?" I just nodded and wrote a note asking her not to divulge my medical information. Despite her raised eyebrows, she nodded in agreement as I wrote another note. Is there anyone at the hospital who can help me fill out a waiver of resuscitation form? I noticed that Nurse Smith was taken aback by my request, but she remained calm. Your condition is not too dangerous, the nurse assured me, but I interrupted her, furiously emphasizing the words in my notebook. I will convey your wishes to the day shift, she said, and patted me comfortingly on the shoulder, after which she left the room. It seemed to me that my life was already over, so why try to save her with the help of doctors? Knowing my luck, I will most likely survive, but I will remain in a vegetative state, so I decided to let fate take its course. Besides, it would be an even bigger shock for my wife to find out what I did and how much she offended me. I was plagued by insomnia. I lay in bed for several days, unable to rest, but instead I was thinking and strategizing. Although I told others that I was doing risk analysis for an insurance company, I was actually helping our clients analyze their business risks. This service was in high demand, and many customers relied on it. I have held this position for many years. I have done a great job and received appropriate remuneration. In my own experience, every company has its own fears, and my role was to make sure they were paying attention to the right issues and offering solutions to address those risks. I realized that there is a structured approach to conducting such an analysis, and decided to use the same method to solve my problem. Although I knew that my wife wasn't trying to literally hurt me with her words, it seemed to me that she was close to it. The decision I had just made gave me some respite, which was extremely important for developing a strategy for my future actions. Lying in bed and waiting for the sun to rise, I began to assess my situation. I am one of those eccentric people who have a dialogue with themselves when they reflect, and this case was no exception. So I managed to stall for time. I need to think about the essence of the matter. There was nothing unusual about my wife's direct and concise communication style, so she didn't try to surprise me with her words. It's just how she always behaved. What exactly did she say? She's been thinking about it for months. Did I not notice any signs, any changes in her behavior? Did she have any verbal hints that I might not have noticed? Is it possible that she has already been unfaithful to me? I answered both questions with a firm no. Debbie is not impulsive and is not prone to spontaneous actions. She is methodical in her actions and, having made a decision, follows it without hesitation and indecision. In addition, it is important to note that she did not express a desire to date other men. Rather, she stated her intention to do so. I am faced with a serious problem that is unlikely to disappear, especially since it put me in the hospital. The situation is not easy, but here are the options I see for myself. First of all, I can let her keep seeing other guys and hope that eventually she'll come to her senses and everything will go back to normal. Secondly, I can try to convince her to stop because I can't imagine sharing my wife with anyone else. Thirdly, I can end my marriage and move on. And finally, I can just give up and not worry about it anymore. To be honest, the fourth option doesn't seem so bad to me right now, but I still feel terrible. It turned out that I was wrong. I must have managed to fall asleep because the next moment sunlight poured in through the window, and the clock on the wall showed 11 in the morning. Shortly after waking up, the doctor came and informed me that the heart attack I had experienced occurred with a complete blockage of the left anterior descending artery of the heart. He noted that I was very lucky, because the probability of survival with this type of heart attack is usually very low. If my wife hadn't called the emergency service, I wouldn't be alive right now. Despite the fact that the doctor noted how lucky I was, I still did not feel joy. I asked if severe stress could have triggered the attack, to which he explained that although emotional trauma can be a trigger, major heart problems have long existed due to genetics and high cholesterol levels. I asked this out of curiosity, wanting to get to the root cause of my health problems. I tried to describe the situation with my wife to him as best I could. He replied, "Ah, that clarifies why you asked for a ban on visits. Mr. Johnson, You will have to stay here for a few more days, and it is very important that you rest and recover during this time. The recovery process will take some time, but we were able to install a stent instead of a bypass, which should shorten your recovery time. Unfortunately, I can't help you with your personal problems. I strongly recommend contacting a psychologist so that he will solve your problems when you begin your journey to recovery. You may be surprised to learn that depression is a common side effect of a heart attack like yours. Given your relationship problems, you may be particularly vulnerable. With these words, he left the room without saying goodbye, which is typical for doctors for whom treatment is more important than communicating with patients. After that, another doctor came, who introduced herself as a hospitalist and read out a long list of medications that I would need over the next year. It felt like I was handed a pharmacy inventory. At this point, the idea of a fourth solution seemed more and more attractive. As soon as the hospitalist left, I heard a noise in the hallway. It turned out to be my wife, who was making a scandal because she was refused a date with me. She demanded to be informed about my condition, but had to call security to escort her out when she was told that I specifically asked not to inform her about my condition. For the first time since she dumped her plans on me, I felt a little calmer. It may seem silly, but for me it was a small triumph. It turned out that the doctor, after learning about my condition, gave me a sedative. Or maybe I was just so exhausted that I ended up sleeping for more than a day. When I finally woke up, it was already the middle of the night, and Nurse Smith was standing next to me. "I'm glad to see you awake," she said, trying to cheer me up. Then she asked if we could talk, and I nodded in agreement, making sure she called me Tim. I was grateful that I could still speak, despite the slight hoarseness. She grinned and agreed, asking me to call her Beth. When we started talking, she acknowledged my situation and respected my no visitors rule, but expressed concern about the DNR request. I asked her to ignore the DNR, explaining that I was not ready to die yet and that eventually I would have to talk to my wife. But I wanted to wait until I was fully recovered. Beth agreed and said she would have to ask my wife and daughters to leave the room before I woke up. She understood that eventually I would have to talk to my wife, but suggested that I could talk to my daughters first. And then it dawned on me. Did my daughters know what their mother had told me? The girls were strongly attached to their mother, so it is possible that they knew about her intentions in advance. Although this is unlikely, Debbie had a very close relationship with Darcy, and they communicated regularly, so Darcy could be aware. Perhaps Debbie shared the truth with the girls after the events related to me. Anyway, I agreed with Beth that I needed to talk to my daughters. The older girls have come a long way to be with me, and Beth promised to bring them in turn for a conversation. I made it clear that I was not ready to talk to my wife, and she respected my wishes. I was surprised that the girls returned to my room so quickly. Most likely Beth only sent them to the waiting room for a while. I thought everything was taken care of, but I couldn't wait to see my daughters. That evening I talked to each of the daughters separately, making it clear that I did not want to discuss their mother. Instead, I told them how glad I was to see them, and how much I loved them. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I was worried when I realized how close I had come to losing them forever. During our conversation, Sydney mentioned that Debbie had hinted that she felt responsible for my situation, without revealing details. I didn't argue with Sydney, realizing that she found it curious. She also noted that Debbie had committed to meet with them the next day to give a full explanation. Terry and Darcy informed me that they planned to take an extended vacation to help my recovery. The rush of emotions was so strong that Beth had to end the visit ahead of schedule. When I saw my daughters, I realized that no matter how my fate with Debbie turns out, life will go on. Although my life will undoubtedly become more difficult, it will not stop. The only decision I had to make was about my relationship with my spouse. Is it even worth discussing it with her? Even if she retracts her words, will I be able to coexist with her? I needed to find out before contacting her. Maybe the girls will help me make the right decision. If Sydney was right, Debbie should have told them what caused my heart attack, so their opinion might be valuable. Infidelity affects not only the couple's relationship, but also the whole family as a whole. An unexpected turn of events. My wife and daughters decided that I would stay in our house, and my wife would move in with Sydney's family. Terry and Darcy agreed to take turns caring for me during my recovery. The doctors assured me that I would return to normal life within 6 months. That was fine with me, but I couldn't help but notice that for the first 2 weeks while I was at home, my wife didn't pay any attention to me. It occurred to me that maybe the girls had intervened and advised her to give me some space. I wondered if she was using this opportunity for dating. I wasn't sure if that was the case, but I didn't want to engage in a direct conversation with her either. Instead, I decided to talk to Darcy first, as she had always been close to her mother and could have an idea of her state of mind. Darcy and I met alone at the house, and she understood that I wanted to discuss the situation. Like my wife, I am a straight man. So as soon as Darcy came in, I asked her, "Darcy, how long have you known that your mother wants to date other men?" "We discussed it casually," she muttered, avoiding my gaze. "When did this happen, Darcy?" I exclaimed. "I'm sorry, Dad. It was about 3 or 4 months ago." My anger was building, and I felt like I was losing control of myself. I needed to come to my senses urgently. "I'm sorry, Darcy. I didn't mean to raise my voice. I appreciate your opinion. This news has deeply affected me. I completely ignored the fact that your mother was unhappy with our relationship. It really hurts me to realize this." I tried to calm myself. "She just wants to learn something new before it's too late. It won't affect our connection in any way." "Do you really believe that?" "Darcy, how can her intimacy with other men not affect me? I'm shocked that you can say that. Do you think I should let her explore relationships with other men to expand her experience, and then come back to me as if nothing had changed?" "Maybe not exactly, but your love for her should be firm enough to support her in this. She dedicated her life to her family, and now she wants it for herself. Dad, maybe you've relaxed a little at 59. It is quite understandable that Mom is interested in younger men. This is a common desire for women." Darcy shocked me with her words. This revelation was very unexpected. I assumed Debbie didn't want to date older men, but when my daughter confirmed it, I was surprised. It turned out that her meetings were based solely on intimacy. I thought I was meeting her needs, but apparently I was wrong. Shouldn't her love for me be enough to satisfy her desires? The fact that I slowed down did not justify the fact that she was looking for satisfaction elsewhere. "Don't be ridiculous, Daddy," she said. "If you knew about it, it wouldn't be considered treason. That's why she tried to discuss it with you." We danced around this topic for another 5 or 10 minutes, but we didn't achieve anything. Darcy made his point clear. I had to end this conversation before I lost my temper. Darcy asked in a slightly childish tone, "What now, Daddy?" I replied, "I'm not sure, Darcy. I really don't know. But I can't accept that your mom is dating other men. It's just not something I can put up with." I knew Debbie would find out about our conversation soon. We hugged and said goodbye. I silently wished Darcy either not to get married or to reveal her beliefs to her future spouse. In contrast, my conversation with Terry was completely different. She entered the room in an excited state and exclaimed, "I can't believe she's doing this to us." "Hey," I said, holding out my hand to her. "This is your mom. And she doesn't hurt all of us, but only me. Dad, when one of the family members commits adultery, it affects everyone. So yes, she is unfaithful to her family." "Terry, you were talking about infidelity, not potential infidelity. You don't know all the details, do you, Dad? She dated other men while you were in the hospital. I suspect she started doing it before your heart attack, and although she didn't have a physical relationship with them, she was definitely connected to them." I had a feeling that my relationship with Darcy was doomed after these revelations. I wouldn't be surprised if Debbie was already dating someone else. It was a strange situation. I expected my health to be at risk again, but nothing happened. Instead, I just felt sad, resigned to the fact that my marriage was ending. To be honest, I wasn't shocked by Debbie's action. She has always been independent. But I couldn't understand why she called for help when I had a heart attack. It didn't make sense. I wondered again if I should even sit down with her at the negotiating table. Terry and I chatted a little more, delving into our state's divorce laws. In a state like ours, divorce happens without fault. Terry suggested that I consider splitting up if I'm not ready to break up with Debbie yet. I informed her that I would consider this option, but ultimately, I don't think it will change anything. Terry mentioned that although my wife cannot prevent a divorce, she can potentially postpone it. This statement intrigued me, prompting me to urgently seek legal advice. Terry promised to give me some legal advice the next day. My conversation with Sydney was mainly aimed at calming her down, as she was clearly upset and crying. She insisted that I take Debbie home, but I reminded her that I hadn't asked her to leave. She was free to come home whenever she wanted. The house belonged to her as well as to me. I asked a few direct questions. Sydney, did your mom go to meetings after I got to the hospital? I knew the answer. I wanted to hear the truth. Sydney just nodded, tears streaming down her face. How often, Sid? I asked. Sobbing, she quietly confessed. Almost every night, Daddy. I tried to discuss this issue with her. I informed her that she was cheating on you, but she said that this was not the case because she had not had intimacy with any of them. She also stated that she informed you in advance of her actions. I could only shake my head in disbelief. Before Sydney left, I contacted her mother to let her know that I was feeling better and that she could return to her home whenever she wanted. I stressed that she should do it immediately, as Sydney would most likely have a nervous breakdown if she continued to stay with her. I ended the conversation without paying attention to her words. Having prepared for our meeting, I focused on the task at hand. Sydney informed me that Daddy would be home for lunch the next day, and I spent the rest of the day putting my notes in order. A well thought out plan is crucial in any battle, and I was fully prepared for the upcoming challenge. However, as they say, the first shot often ruins the plan, and that's exactly what happened in my case. When Debbie returned home, she didn't just walk through the door, she burst through it shouting, "Where are you?" My eyes widened when she noticed that I was sitting at the table with my notes neatly spread out in front of me. Ignoring any opportunity to speak out, she continued her impassioned speech, declaring, "There will be no divorce." It is worth noting that my wife, a schoolteacher, was very fond of history, especially the era of the American Civil War. It became clear to me that she was using the tactics of Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain of the 20th Regiment of the American Main Fleet on Little Round Top during the second day of the Battle of Gettysburg. In a similar situation, Chamberlain's regiment was located on the extreme left flank of the Union Army, serving as the last line of defense against Lee's Confederate forces advancing on Washington. The battle was intense. Chamberlain's troops suffered from fatigue and lack of ammunition. The losses were catastrophically high, and it seemed that all hopes were lost. But Chamberlain, a seemingly ordinary college professor of rhetoric, defied the expectations of civilians by ordering his remaining troops to launch an attack. This bold move eventually turned the tide in favor of the Union. Similarly, my wife surprised me with a surprise attack when she should have been on the defensive, leaving me completely stunned and helpless when I found myself lying defeated on our bed, with Debbie lying next to me. Having exhausted all my strength, she finally started to get dressed and said that she would return the next day with her things so that we could move on. As she headed for the bedroom door, I whispered, "Debbie, thanks for calling the ambulance." She replied with a nod and said in an exasperated tone, "It's because I care about you. We are together for a long time." With these words, she urged me to rest, since we had lost time that needed to be made up, and left the room. "Debbie, I have to clarify one more thing. If you make love to someone else, our marriage is over," I said with all the authority I could muster. She shuddered with excitement and answered defiantly, "We'll see." Over the next few months, everything seemed to return to normal, but it was a new form of routine as she continued to date. We didn't mention my ultimatum anymore. She didn't tell me about her dates, but she often mentioned that she was leaving and coming back late at night. This happened once or twice a week. Despite her disheveled appearance on these nights, she never smelled of intimacy. After taking a shower and getting into bed, she continued her seductive courtship of me. In the end, I accepted the situation, realizing that if I was going to die, it would be a good way to leave my life. I was sure she wasn't with anyone else, just because I was sure. That evening, she returned home even later than usual, in the dead of night. I sat up in bed, unable to fall asleep without her presence. It wasn't that I was worried about her safety, but rather anticipating what was about to happen. The sound of the garage door opening heralded her return, followed by the clatter of her high-heeled shoes on the kitchen tile and the familiar creak of the stairs she was climbing. When she entered the bedroom, our eyes collided, and at that moment I understood everything without words. It was obvious that she knew that I understood the situation. She turned away and went to the bathroom, saying, "It doesn't matter. This is temporary and will end soon. Let's not dwell on it." With that, she closed the door behind her. As soon as I heard the shower noise, I headed to the guest room. I not only locked the door, but also barricaded it with a chest of drawers. For some reason, it seemed to me that she would not follow me. It wasn't her style. She thought that as soon as I cooled down, everything would go back to normal, and she was right. She didn't say a word to me for the rest of the evening. On the contrary, I couldn't close my eyes. Tears welled up in my eyes as I grieved over the end of my marriage, and my mind was busy planning for the future. Over the next few weeks, we looked more like each other. We remained polite to each other, but just went about our daily chores and worries. I knew that she had left the house several more times, but I was not sure about her activity. I moved into the guest room and usually fell asleep by the time she came home. Surprisingly, I found solace in my plans and became calmer and more confident in my chosen course. There was not a moment of self-pity or doubt. I didn't wonder what could be improved, and I didn't criticize myself for not being a more caring spouse. I didn't apologize or take the blame for not fully understanding my wife's emotions. From my point of view, marriage is an agreement, and she broke it, not me. She never told me about her problems and frustrations, but just made decisions without discussion. Despite this, I could understand her desire to learn more. After all, this is a normal human emotion. But she didn't give us a chance to work on it together and find another solution. She single-handedly made the decision that eventually led to our breakup. No questions asked. I understood why she felt the need to take matters into her own hands. In most Western marriages, women tend to be more in control of the situation, and our marriage was no exception. Looking back, I can say that I was too passive. In so many years of our life together, I have never once pointed out to her that her behavior is unacceptable. I let her dictate our home life because her happiness meant more to me than anything else. Before committing to marriage, we carefully discussed our expectations of fidelity. We had clear boundaries, and there was no room for ambiguity. I have always been faithful and never even thought about cheating. I expected the same level of loyalty from Debbie. It was her betrayal that caused the collapse of our relationship, not my actions. Just a few weeks after Debbie's first infidelity incident, I was mentally prepared for it. That evening, when she left, I waited for her return at the kitchen table, where our family often gathered. When she returned, I calmly said, "Debbie, we need to talk." She replied dismissively, "Not now. I need to take a shower and get some sleep. Maybe we can talk in the morning." With my newfound authority, I insisted, "No, we'll talk now. Please sit down." She sat down in the chair opposite me, clearly filled with anger and annoyance. It was obvious that she was nervous, perhaps because of her lover's scent, but I ignored it. I handed her an envelope from Manila across the table and said firmly, "These are the divorce papers. I submitted them because of unresolved differences." When she started talking, I raised my hand to silence her. "No, just sit here. Months ago, you told me to listen to you without interruption, and now I expect the same." She leaned back, rolled her eyes, crossed her arms, and stared at me. I continued, "These documents contain all the information you need. Inside the envelope is my lawyer's contact information. Please sign them and return them to his office. If you do not do this within 3 days, I will be forced to hand them over to you at your place of work. I'd rather not embarrass you in public, but it won't be difficult for me to do it in front of your many lovers." "I wasn't following you. I don't have any evidence of your infidelity, whether it's photos, audio, or video. None of this matters to me. Here's the thing. In the state, without the fault of the guilty, everything is divided equally. Our children have grown up and live independently. The house is fully paid for. We will pay off our shared credit card debts and move on with our lives." "Are you done?" she asked in a haughty tone. I nodded. She stood up and said, "Okay, but we're not getting divorced. I'm tired and I'm going to bed. Good night." The next morning she expressed a desire to talk. What caught my attention was that for the first time in a long time, she had prepared a wonderful breakfast for us. She looked very cheerful, studying in the kitchen. After serving breakfast and seeing my shocked expression, she calmly sat down at the table and motioned for me to join her. It all seemed unreal. I chose not to sit down, informed her that I would be eating elsewhere, and walked out the door. She had no idea that I was heading to a rented apartment near my place of work and had no plans to return to our house, except to pick up my things after the divorce. Maybe she was crying quietly when I got into the car, but I couldn't be sure. At that moment, I was determined not to engage in further conversation. We communicated only with our lawyers and did not make direct contact. As expected, she did not want to sign the divorce papers. As promised, I officially handed her a summons at her place of work. She quickly hired a lawyer and began to obstruct the divorce process. Despite my and our daughter's attempts to convince her otherwise, she remained adamant in her actions. But in the end, her efforts were in vain, and the divorce took place as planned. 6 months later, we ended up in family court with our lawyers, but I was too focused on wanting to get it over with as soon as possible to pay much attention to the process. It was the only official hearing I had to attend, and my lawyer informed me that it was necessary. I was relieved to hear that. When the judge turned to address my wife directly, I took a seat and listened attentively. The judge asked my wife, "Mrs. Johnson, why don't you agree to grant the divorce petition as it was written? From the point of view of property distribution, everything looks fair." My wife, standing in front of the judge and elegantly dressed, replied, "Your Honor, a few months ago, in the midst of menopause, I made a disastrous choice that eventually led to the breakup of our 41-year marriage. Feeling insecure and unattractive, I succumbed to the attention and flattery of younger men at work, foolishly believing that my husband would understand and give me a pass for a few fleeting flirtations. When he found out about my infidelity, it came as a shock to me because I foolishly believed that he was not against my actions. It's clear now that I was very wrong. After he handed me the divorce papers, I stopped all contact. I went to therapy several times a week, and my therapist helped me realize that I was wrong. Although I can't stop him from getting divorced, I hope we can attend couples counseling to save our marriage. It's only fair that my husband agrees to joint therapy before announcing the divorce," Debbie said, and sat down at the table with a mischievous smile on her face. I was sure that the judge would propose to Debbie because her speech made such an impression on him. But that wasn't what I wanted. I looked desperately at my lawyer for help, but then the judge turned to me. "Mr. Johnson, are you listening to me? What do you think of your wife's arguments?" My heart sank when I realized that the judge was suggesting that we try to save our long-lasting relationship. "Damn," I muttered to myself. "I can't believe this is happening to me." My wife was practically ecstatic. My lawyer was furiously writing something down in a notebook. I had serious problems. But then a sudden realization dawned on me. I was ready to fight back because the battle had already begun. Your Honor, may I think a little about what my wife just said? She made some strong arguments that I need to discuss with my lawyer. The judge replied amiably, "Of course, I think that would be wise." The atmosphere in the courtroom was reminiscent of a scene from a Hallmark studio movie. I immediately looked at my lawyer and asked, "What happens if I withdraw my divorce application right now? Will you be able to schedule counseling sessions in a new way?" My lawyer, who looked like Clarence Darrow, a prominent American lawyer known for his involvement in famous lawsuits, turned to me and firmly stated that the court no longer had the right to hear this case. When I asked about the consequences of my disappearance, he explained that in a year my wife could file for divorce, citing the fact that she had been abandoned. "Only if luck is on my side," I replied, mulling over the idea before letting out a heavy sigh. "Is there a requirement that I continue to live with my wife?" Different options were spinning in my head. "No, there is no requirement," he replied, adopting a lawyer's tone. Suddenly it dawned on him and he asked, "Will I still receive payments?" "Absolutely, Clarence," I assured him, grinning broadly. I straightened my tie, wiped my hands on my trousers, and confidently stood up to address the court. Everyone was hoping for a happy ending, like in the Hallmark movie, and I was ready to give it to them. "Your Honor, after my wife's powerful speech, I have decided to withdraw my petition for divorce." The courtroom was in chaos. Well, not really chaos. Just a few people loitering around during their lunch break. The judge banged his gavel, officially ending the trial. My wife and her lawyer were crying with happiness. I was furious, but I made what I hoped was a happy face and walked out of the courtroom. I went to my car, and my wife followed me, muttering something about how happy we were, blah blah blah. I started the car and left it in the parking lot, wondering what had just happened. After leaving the parking lot, I threw my phone into the bushes and drove straight to work, where I immediately went to the HR department and retired. At the age of 59 and a half, I realized that I could count on my $401,000 as a source of financial security. Although I was still a few years away from receiving Social Security, I was confident in my ability to support myself with this money and other assets. After the divorce, I visited the bank to settle the necessary financial issues. Our house, which was fully repaid, was valued at almost $1 million, and our other assets were about the same. I decided to transfer everything to my name, exclusively to my name, and refinance the house in Debbie's name. Since my family did not know about my whereabouts and contacted me only for work or by phone, I was able to carry out my plan without interference. After making an appointment with Debbie, I drove up to the house that had once been ours, and now most likely belonged to my wife, in my brand new 11-foot Class A Georgetown motorhome. In the back seat was my fresh Jeep Wrangler, ready for a new adventure. I knocked on the door and heard Debbie and our 3 daughters coming towards me from inside. I had warned them in advance of my arrival, anticipating trouble and wanting them to look after Debbie. "Darling, you're back! We were so worried about you!" they exclaimed, gathering around me. The daughters were already inspecting the mobile home, feeling that something was wrong. "Actually, I came to say goodbye," I said solemnly. "Say goodbye? What does it mean to say goodbye? We'll always be together, right?" Debbie asked, concern in her voice. "We've always been together, darling," I assured her. "I'm going away for a while, Deb." "What about work, Tim?" "I'm retired, Deb. I'm going to spend some time traveling around the country." "But I can't leave the school district so soon. School has already started. I know that traveling around the country in a motorhome is our dream, but I can't do it right now." She still doesn't understand, unlike her daughters, who understood and were shocked. Their piercing gazes were fixed on me, because they knew perfectly well that I would soon leave them to deal with an unreasonable and senseless wife, and their displeasure was quite palpable. "Debbie, we have to go inside and talk," I have a lot to tell you and I want to hear your thoughts." Reluctantly, we all went into the kitchen and took our places at the familiar table. Memories of past family meetings flooded back to me, making the realization that this might be our last meeting almost unbearable. I've been thinking about my situation for the last few weeks. I found that all traces of anger had dissipated. I was no longer plagued by nervousness, fear, and self-doubt. Instead, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in years. Based on this, I started a conversation. First of all, I want to apologize to you, Debbie, and to you girls for my initial reaction when I found out about your affairs with other men. I admit that my behavior in the hospital was immature. I raised my hand to signal Debbie to pause before she could respond. Please let me finish my thoughts. I understand that the heart attack was not your fault. By a strange coincidence, your presence may have saved my life. A heart attack was inevitable. But thanks to your quick actions when you called for help, I'm still here. The paramedics confirmed this to me, so I am sincerely grateful. This realization has been haunting me since our court session, Debbie. We have never been independent because we have been together since school years. Now I understand how you felt when you shared your intentions with me. At first, I focused on the most personal aspect of your desires, but now I understand that what you really wanted was privacy. You wanted to assert your independence and take control of your own life. It dawned on me that I am in a similar situation to you. Our lives have been intertwined for so long, but now I also feel the need to live on my own. I think it's important for both of us to spend some time apart to reveal our individuality. I let her talk and didn't interrupt her, knowing it was useless. The thought of being alone scares me. I swore never to let you go. We will always be inseparable. I regret my words. I was in a dark place. Despite tears and sniffling, she managed to utter the words. She seemed to be on the verge of a nervous breakdown. The girls, although visibly upset, remained calm and silent. Deb, I understand and accept your decision to never give me a divorce. I don't want to get divorced anymore. It doesn't matter to me anymore. But we're not going to live together. I need to find myself outside of our relationship. During our conversation, I handed her the inheritance certificate. I'm giving you the house and taking most of our other assets to ensure an equal division. The girls were visibly upset when they realized the situation. My dear Tim, please think again. I can make it up to you, and I believe that in the end you will forgive me. It's been a few months since I last dated anyone. My therapist helped me realize the fallacy of my path. Please reconsider your decision. You promised to come back. I've already forgiven you, Deb. Maybe one day I'll come back too. I'm releasing you from our marriage vows. I want you to be free and be able to do what makes you happy without feeling guilty. I just can't stay here while you're doing this. How can I contact you if I need to talk? You can't just leave me like that. This is wrong. She covered her head with her hands, crying uncontrollably and unable to say anything more. Turning to my daughters, I apologized for what had happened. I assured them of my eternal love and urged them to take care of their mother. I gave them my email address so they could contact me, as due to my fickle lifestyle, I had neither a phone nor a permanent address. After walking out the door and leaving them in tears, I climbed into my mobile home and drove off into the unknown, starting a new chapter of my life, without looking back, alone. I was determined never to see this lying, lustful woman again, to whom I had given my whole life. I often called the girls, and a year after my departure, they told me that their mother was behaving inappropriately. She began to get younger and was trying to molest young guys who were 20 years older than her. Her outfits are usually very provocative for her age. To all this, Deb started flirting with our daughter's husband, which shocked everyone. As a result, Deb is lonely and unhappy.